Hi, and welcome to another edition of Seniors Today. I'm your host, Tom Bartee, and today we have an incredible guest, Mr. Dennis Yen, who is chair of the Solano County Fair Board.
Actually, vice president this year.
Vice president.
Vice president of the Solano County Fair Management Board.
Former chair.
Going to be chair.
Oh.
If they don't boot me out of there
Incumbent.
ahead of time, but yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Tom.
So we all know that the fair is really a great thing for the county,
Mm-hmm.
and I know Vallejo residents appreciate it being here in Vallejo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's been an interesting year for the fair, in particular with the wildfires, and I understand the fair played a pretty significant role in supporting the efforts of that whole thing.
Yeah, as it turned out, and we all know the fires erupted so quickly and caught pretty much everyone off guard. Within a few hours, they had reached out to our general manager at the Solano County Fair, and Office of Emergency Services had activated its status as an emergency center, and specifically for large animal evacuation. They thought horses at that point, coming out of the fires in Napa and Sonoma. So it started out as the Napa County Large Animal Evacuation Center. But as it turned out, we started out, they told us we could expect maybe 100 horses or so. As it turned out, we ended up with over 350 horses. And all in an area that we had never used to any large degree for the previous 10 to 12 years. It was the stables that we used to use, of course, for when we had horse racing, and horse racing was active, but we haven't had horse racing in several years. And so we were actually ready to demolish all of those stables. They're scheduled to be demolished next year to make way for redevelopment. So we ended up having to activate those, and that in itself, we didn't know which barns were good, which barns were bad. We didn't know what to expect in terms of how many horses, were they all going to come at once? Were they going to trickle in? We had issues of how we're going to feed them, how we're going to get, just feed. And as it turned out, within about 48 hours, we had created an entire city. We had lights, water. The Vallejo Fire Department had come in, and because we had concerns about fire suppression ourselves. It's old wooden buildings in a weeded area. So the question became, what happens if an ember came over and ignited or started a small fire in our facility? What would we do? And so the fire department came out, made sure that our water pressure was up, left us hoses because they were detailed to the emergency as well. So they left us equipment with some brief instructions on what to do in case there was a fire. And so it was those kinds of cooperative efforts that really brought everything up.
Did they think that the fire, if it were to continue heading south, they would have followed that ridge line all the way?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think if you look northeast from the stable area up through the property, the fairgrounds, that ridge, we already saw the smoke by the second day as the fire came behind Green Valley. So the concern was, of course, that the fire, if the wind shifted, it could bring it down into Vallejo. And then our problems would be multiplied. As it was, it stayed up in that area and moved a little bit more east. So we were fortunate as Vallejo. Obviously, a lot of people weren't fortunate, but we were.
So once the evacuations were cleared up in Napa County and I guess a little segment of Solano County, then all the horses and everything kind of went back as they could?
Yeah, as it turned out, we ended up, a lot of ranchers took the fire threat very seriously by the second day. And so they were given alerts to evacuate, and they decided just to evacuate. That's what grew the number so quickly. So we ended up not only receiving horses, but there were sheep farmers, there were goat farmers, goat herders. We had llamas. We had all kinds of animals. So we ended up activating the livestock area that we normally just reserve for exhibitions at fair time. And they had all been cleaned up and kind of, just kind of put away for the winter. And so we had to activate all of those pens. and again, bring in feed and bring in restraints and all kinds of equipment. Even for the rabbits and the chickens, we had trouble finding little water bottles for the cages because all of that was gone. You know, people normally bring them in at fair time with their animals, so we don't keep a supply of that kind of thing. So we had to put out an emergency call for water bottles for cages, because we had a whole wall of just poultry and then rabbits.
So how many total animals did you have
Oh, gosh.
at the high point?
I think at the high point there had to be 400 or 500 animals.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier that it was almost like magic that the donations would appear
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
truckloads of hay and
Yes, you know, no one knew what to expect. We had, never experienced that, obviously, and never had to come up and never had drilled for it, in fact. So we made an emergency order, for instance, for hay, and it was delivered. But as it turned out, the volunteers in the equine community from all around Northern California started bringing things in, started bringing in bedding for the stables, for the stable areas, wood chips, hay, feed. We had it all stacked up and so that the ranchers could come in and just kind of treat it like an emporium where whatever they needed, they could come and get it and take it away. So we had special feed even for senior horses, which I never knew was necessary.
yeah,
And,
we have one of those on our show right after this.
Okay. Well, I hope you feed them well,
Yeah.
because they require special feed.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty amazing. And also, the time frame was actually only somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks, and then
It was a little over
they
2
were-
weeks.
they're
Yeah.
all gone.
We were very fortunate. Everybody was fortunate. When the fires began to subside and people could get back to their areas, we had to start making some plans about what happens if people couldn't get back to their farms or their ranches or didn't have anything to go back to. Would we board them? What would the situation be? As it turned out, all of them, once they were able to get back into their areas, found that many of their structures were still intact. They needed water, they needed power, that kind of thing. But once those kind of things were restored, they were able to move their horses back out and board them, if not at their own facility, at least at a facility at a neighbor's. And so we were able to move all of the horses out after about the 13th or 14th day. And then we were able to move the small animals back up into Solano County in about the same time frame.
So how many total stables are there out there?
Wow.
Somebody, I think I heard 900, is
Yes,
that?
yes. It was amazing. We didn't really have a hard count because it had been so long since we used them. And I recalled them when I was a kid. That was one of the places you would tour when you went to the fairs. You get to walk among the stables, but we never counted them. So, but there are close to 900 actual stalls. And of course, some of them were in various degrees of decay. So we could use some stall areas and maybe not others. So they had to be evaluated, and we had to have them rebuilt, in essence, and reinforced, hinges, fresh wood. And the community really stepped up. If we needed 1x4s to reinforce gate areas, the call went out, and we would send a truck out and, for instance, go to O'Connor Lumber here in Vallejo and picked up a load of 1x4s.
Wow.
Specifically. We needed lighting at night because while we had power out there, we had no lights. And so we were able to get portable generators and lights from DC Solar in Benicia. Just the whole business community responded. It was amazing. It was just simply amazing.
So you talked about tearing those down. Is that still going to happen in a year from now?
Yeah, I think it's still on schedule to be taken down. They're dangerous. That was, the main reason. We have no use for them. Now the question is, should we perhaps rebuild some of them? Because Solano County Fairgrounds is a designated disaster relief area. So if it happens again, would we have the capability to handle large animals? We certainly have the space, but would we have the ability to do that in terms of buildings and supplies and services such as water, heat, electricity. So that's another discussion that's taking place. And of course, I was in one of those, and someone had just glibly said, "Well, you know, it doesn't happen every year. You know, how often
Well, let's
do
hope
these?
not.
Yeah, how often does this happen?" And then, of course, Southern California fires up, and now we have the largest wildfire in the state of California, in the Thomas Fire. And that was a similar situation, a small fire fanned by the Santa Ana winds, and became uncontrollable within hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it raises a lot of questions.
Do you think they might have plans to keep a couple of the stalls as practice or warm-up areas for politicians entering the buffalo chip throwing contest?
Yes. You know, certainly we've always got a place for you. That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
a problem. I can always find
Yeah.
a stall for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm still in training.
yeah. As I said, all of them will come down eventually, probably by next year, the end of next year, they'll all be down. We still have to think about what we're going to do with the area. Yeah,
Mhm.
but now it becomes one has a different value than it had before.
Well, there's forward motion on the Solano 360 project.
Yes. Yes.
I guess I'm fishing.
Yeah. Yeah, gee, thank you for leading me into that. The Solano 360 project, unfortunately, the developer that was the lead developer for the project dropped out. So, which left the county with no one to take the lead on developing it. The concept had evolved into event space. The thought being, if you had spaces for competitive events such as softball, soccer, lacrosse, you know, whatever that is, you could then bring in tournaments and you know, sports activities at that level, at the regional, state, and national tournament level, is actually pretty lucrative. You know, it brings not only fees, but it also brings in people to use facilities, hotel rooms, restaurants, and the rest of that. So it's a real economic engine if handled properly. That concept could, I think, personally, could still work. It was just a question of finding that mix of activities that could come in at that level. And that's what, you know, we've got a couple of projects in the pipeline. The Solano County Fair Management Board has a few things in the pipeline, both from the Vallejo area as well as other places. We'll be presenting those to the Board of Supervisors in January at our regularly scheduled budget hearings. We're hoping that the Board of Supervisors and the staff will look upon them as opportunities. While we have lost the main developer, that doesn't mean we have lost the ability to bring in business. And so we think we can do that.
Well, it should be a pretty desirable development site. I mean, there's not that many large parcels left in in important areas contiguous to freeway. And
Yeah, I mean, it's always been an attractive area from a business development standpoint. It's just finding the right mix over the right project. And there's still the belief, I think, in appropriately so, that events, particularly athletic events and that kind of thing. We do a lot of dog shows, and people think, oh, just a dog show, and that's fine. But dog shows, we net over $50,000 a show. So it's like, you know, because it's a regional show. It is not simply a local show where people come and bring their dogs, but it is in fact an intense competition at the regional and sectional level for their associations. So, and they bring in their RVs, and they stay there for the entire weekend, 4 days, 5 days. And so they're, you know, so that kind of activity, we believe, can be improved.
you have a show almost every weekend, or is it less frequent than that?
Actually, the fairgrounds is actually pretty well used if we're talking the weekends themselves. You know, between dog shows and RV shows, spa. You know, at the same time we had the disaster relief going on, we had a spa show going on. So we had not only had at one end providing emergency and disaster relief for the area, but at the other end, a commercial event. So that really stretched our resources. You know, we managed to get it all done, thanks to a great staff, but it's...
Well, I
it
was
was quite a
impressed at how
stretch.
organized everybody was, and how many volunteers there were.
Oh, yeah, thousands,
Yeah,
literally thousands.
It was really amazing to see it
Yeah.
all come together like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So really, thank you guys for everything you did to support the fire
Thank you. Thank you.
and those people in need.
We'll be having an appreciation reception for all the volunteers on, let me see, Tuesday. If you have not, Tuesday, December 19th at 5:30. If you have not received notice and you are a volunteer or involved in the rescue effort, please feel free to drop by the fairgrounds. We'd just like to show our appreciation for all the dedication and all the hours, countless hours that people put in, unquestioningly. They just put the hours in.
Well, that's awesome. So anything else new on the horizon for the fair, or
Well,
next year's
fair, because of a lot of factors, we've had to shift the fair dates. The fair dates will move back to end of June to the 1st of July. I believe June 27th, June 28th, or something like that. Because of the lack of some services, we're going to have to drop the fair to 4 days, at least for this year, and see where we go from there. But I think fairs across the state are all taking a very serious look at how they constitute themselves. Fairs are great events, but they don't necessarily pay for themselves. So you really have to find some other way to subsidize them, and that's always going to be the challenge for the fair. That's certainly our challenge.
Well, I hear that the horse racing is also a component in determining when they're held. And
yeah, the horse racing calendar, even though we don't have horse racing, our calendar is affected by that. So what we did was we said, let's take ourselves out of that sphere of that schedule, of that calendar, and that's why we moved it to late June to July 1st. But as many Vallejoans will probably remember, that's kind of when the fair always was for us. It started the summer. You know, the first thing you did after you got out of school was you got ready for the fair. And, you know, schools were preparing their exhibits, and, you know, industrial arts classes were, you know, getting all their stuff together to go to the fair. And of course, there was also the start of the first heat wave of the season as well. It always seemed like when the fair started, so did the first heat wave. So
4th of July.
4th of July comes into that, and it just kind of launched everybody here in Vallejo, at least, into the summer. So we have an opportunity to do that. So it'll be challenging. I won't, you know, I'm not going to mince words over that. It's a challenging change, but we think we can pull this one off.
Well, with the help of the high intellect senior horses, you should be just fine.
Yeah, you know, if we had the drive and the dedication of all of those ranchers, it would not be a problem at all. They're an amazing, amazing group. As a culture, I was just flabbergasted by their dedication to their animals. You know, everything was for their animals, and you rarely see dedication like that anymore. It wasn't about them, it was about their animals.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also understand that you golf once in a while,
Yeah, I managed to do that.
and you might have a little bit of inside information on the proposal that the city has about the golf course.
I don't know about inside information. I used to be a member of the Vallejo Golf Club governing board, but I haven't been on that board for close to 5 years now. But I've kept up with the events. There's some major changes coming up, from what I can gather. It looks like the Vallejo Golf Club, which has managed the golf courses at Blue Rock Springs and at the fairgrounds for over 70 years, will no longer be in control. They're going to, apparently, city has chosen to bring in an outside vendor. It'll be a challenge to see how that's going to work. If they, perhaps that's another discussion about what the budget for the golf courses actually is. But bottom line is, they've never paid a fee to the Vallejo Golf Club, and now they're going to pay a fee to the new management company. So how they're going to pay a new fee on top of what they project as a perennial loss, you know, so in effect have a larger loss every year. That's going to be the challenge, I think, for them.
Yeah, and they didn't offer that fee to the existing golf club?
No, the Vallejo Golf Club had always said, we will manage it and we won't take a management fee because we put the money back into the golf course. And we always have. Vallejo Golf Club has always put all the money back into the golf courses. In 2004, 2005, out of its own reserves, We redesigned several holes in Maine and did a lot of changes on Blue Rock West, the West course. As you know, there are two golf courses out of Blue Rock Springs, an East and a West course. And we upgraded to the tune of $1.3, $1.4 million of golf club money, golf club reserve money, to improve Blue Rock West. And that wasn't any city money at all. In fact, we got into the perennial argument about, is the city going to take a fee, a permit fee? Mm-hmm. And you know, that's certainly another show. So I don't want to be on that show with you. So.
Well, I guess also the history of Proposition 218 and how the city interpreted that in terms of the water consumption.
Yeah, yeah. Water is it's been a very mixed bag. The city at this point is saying that Prop 218, which you know, sets water rates for water districts and how it is to be set. They're charging their own golf course the commercial rate. The question arose as to why they would do that. There was the insistence that the law said you could do that. But the law also says 218 also allows municipalities and water districts to set special rates for its users, for its own facilities. So the question became, could we set a special rate? And
or why didn't
they? And we had talked, I know, when we did the water rate study that is currently in place in Vallejo, the question of sale of water came up. You know, do we sell our excess water? You know, we currently own the rights to 2.5 times the amount of water Vallejo will ever need. So what do we do? You know, is the excess is certainly a commodity and can be sold on an exchange, and that money accrues to the city but doesn't really come under Prop 218. So that money could be used to offset any number of things. You know, so hopefully the city of Vallejo will take a look at the sale of water as an important component of its water program.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they were unable to, the city, to come up with some kind of preferred rate for their own property. Mm-hmm.
And well, the debt was the biggest issue. Mm-hmm. They maintain that there's an annual debt of $360,000 to $380,000 attributable to the golf course. That was based on a bond that was passed, or not passed, bonds they borrowed. Again, they posted in the early 2000s the golf course properties as collateral for a loan, basically. And so they took money out, took cash out. The city took some of the cash for a bridge loan for itself, and the rest of it was to be used for improving the golf course so it could improve its revenue picture. So we were looking at a brand new clubhouse, we were looking at improved practice facilities that would generate more outside income. But unfortunately, the city continued to kind of redesign and redesign and redesign the project, and wanted a much larger project than the property could handle. But in doing that, it used up almost all of that in design fees. Mm. So there was no money left. And then there was probably $750,000 left for the driving range project. Well, that got eaten up in the bankruptcy. We gave that money back to help out in the bankruptcy. We gave up the Golf Enterprise Fund, which had at that point about $1.2 million in it. So we gave up on that and gave that back to the city to improve the city's liquidity position. So we've given all the golfing community as a group has given back quite a bit, but we never got any of the facilities that were supposed to be out of that bond. Yeah. So in essence, the city got what it wanted, the golf courses never did, but because it's technically out of the golf course, they keep charging it back. So that's $360,000, $370,000 worth of, you know, most of us believe is questionable debt.
Well, half of that was probably water.
No, that was in addition to water.
In addition to?
In addition to water. We started paying on the East course as well.
Did the bond have more than just golf course things paid for?
Yes, there was a bridge loan that the city used some, cashed out some.
Bridge loan and maybe some other things?
Yes.
Because I was just going to say that happened with the loan for the Empress Theater. Mm-hmm. that happened with the Marina Fund.
Yes, yes, it's the
And
same
that-
technique.
You know, they ended up putting other things in there when they did the refinance
Mhm.
and ultimately charged it back against the enterprise fund.
Yes.
And that was, to me, that was always a real disappointment.
Yeah, and to have it continue, you know, they use the supposed debt as a rationale for what they wanted to see for the golf course proposals from the various vendors.
Yeah,
And, but that prevented others from bidding because they couldn't get over that hump.
yeah,
And so I think the city in the short run and later on has done itself a disservice in terms of the golf course debt.
yeah, well, that's a tough one.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, this is Vallejo. What can I tell you?
Well, Vallejo is a great city.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
we do have
I
our
wouldn't live
challenges,
anywhere else.
but-
Wouldn't live anywhere else.
Well, we're just about out of time, if you can believe it.
Oh, geez, a
And-
conversation with Tom Barty running out of time? I can't believe that.
Well, I'll try to quote you on that in the next show.
Okay.
So anything you want to add in the last minute?
No, again, just let me reinforce that if you were involved in the rescue effort, we would just love to thank everyone that pitched in an incredible amount of time and effort into the rescue operation.
All right, well, thanks, Dennis. Thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for everything you do for Vallejo.
Thank you.
And with that, that's all the time we have for today. Our show airs at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays at VCAT 27, AT&T UVerse 99, and streaming live video at vcat.tv. Come see us again next time.